and welcome to Zephr Podcast Sessions with your host, me, Scott Howland. To find out more about Zephr and how we're helping leading brands and businesses with customer journey orchestration, visit www.zephr.com. Hey, and welcome to the show today, Matt Lindsay of Mather Economics. Welcome. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you very much.
Good. So, Matt, look, it'd be great for you to introduce yourself. If you could just give us your name, role, how long you worked at said company, and kind of what you do day to day.
Absolutely. Sure. I'm Matt Lindsay, as you mentioned, the president of Mather Economics. We're an economics consulting firm based in Atlanta. I started the company about 18 years ago, and I'm just running the company on a day-to-day basis right now.
Nice. And what do you do? Who do you work with? Anyone you can give examples of?
Absolutely, sure. We really help clients optimize their subscription businesses. So we work with the companies that have subscribers. We started in the media business, and we work with hundreds of newspaper clients in the United States and Canada and around the world, actually. We also work with some other types of industries that have subscription type relationships with their customers.
So obviously taking into context, we're in the middle of a kind of humanitarian crisis, and kind of coronavirus is the key word. What's the main challenge you're seeing out there at the moment, and what would you kind of say is the key focus for you as a business at the moment?
Sure. So our clients are, as being newspapers, are very cognizant of their role as the kind of sharing information with their communities, really the journalistic mission that they're focused on. And in many cases, though, that journalistic mission, the pursuit of that is contrary to their own best interests in terms of the business interests. And so what we are trying to help them do is balance that. How do they help their communities, but at the same time, put themselves in a strong financial position?
So really helping out those organizations in this time of time of need as well. We're seeing all this in the UK. I don't know what it is in the US, but in the UK, we're seeing furlough the media sales teams and all the advertising sections of these businesses, unfortunately, having to stop doing their jobs for a few months. And one of the things we are seeing, and I don't know what you're seeing, obviously working with optimizing subscriptions, we're seeing a huge increase in subscriptions across some of the brands we're working with. Is that kind of what you're seeing in the market?
We generally are seeing an enormous growth in traffic, and in most cases that does lead to an increase in subscriptions. What we are finding are that publishers that are doing a good job of balancing the mix of free and paid content are doing really well. Some of our publishers that have perhaps given away too much free content really aren't translating that traffic into subscribers. They are really just having a lot of people come to their site. And unfortunately, they're not really monetizing those visitors. The advertising demand or has really dropped during this time. So subscription revenues become really important. And what we're trying to do is help them, as I mentioned before, figure out what's that right mix of free and paid content.
And obviously that's it's a kind of a key strategic move at the moment. So one of those aspects, just from what I know, and we've had conversations in the past, Matt, about different things that you're doing. One of the key themes that we were hoping to talk about today was propensity, and I guess propensity models as a high level. I guess there's two kind of words that come into propensity when we start talking about this, and one is buy and one is churn. Can you pretend I've got a real simple brain on me and I don't really understand? Obviously, I understand a little bit about what's going on. Can you just explain propensity, buy, and churn in a little bit more detail for me?
Certainly. When a person is on a website, for instance, and they're reading content, there is basically a different ways of characterizing that relationship. You've heard the term sales funnel or ladder of engagement, and what that really means is that someone's brand new to the content. They're not at the moment you're trying to establish that relationship. They're really not likely to buy a subscription at that point because they really don't have a firm understanding of what the value proposition is of your content to them. And they don't have a habit of reading that content. So propensity to buy is really a reflection of how engaged they are or how your content has become valuable to them. And that is that. So what we find is that in a time like this, when you have this crisis, the demand for news goes way up. But what we really are also interesting, what's interesting is that the people that are buying subscriptions during this time are really people that are not brand new to these sites. There's people that have been somewhat engaged, but not, they're not first time visitors in most cases. So what we find is that you're capturing these spikes in demand created by pandemics or crime or sports events. Those are really acceleration events. They're really enabling you to, they raise the propensity level to subscribe of people that are pretty much already in your sales funnel. These events also do provide a lot of what we call top of the funnel additions. And so those people will subscribe, but you're just starting the journey with them. So you have to kind of do some things during this time to lay the groundwork for that relationship. Churn is actually the kind of the other side of the coin. So you have a subscriber, and what we find is that there are certain leading indicators of a customer's likelihood of churning. What we call propensity to churn is really just another way of saying their likelihood or their tendency to churn. And some of the big indicator we have are changes in consumption behaviors. Either they often will read a certain amount of content, or they read it at certain times or on certain devices. And if we can tell that those patterns change, that's where we really say their propensity to churn goes up, and we try to take proactive actions to stop that.
Well, first of all, thank you for that. It's really useful, and it's good to understand it in that simplistic way. When you're building out these models, is there a one size fits all? Is there a kind of single cap I can put on all of the people that are propensity to buy, propensity to churn?
That's actually a great question, and that's one of the challenges we have working with publishers, is that we are big advocates for personalization of the relationship, and in many cases that's personalization across a number of margins, including perhaps the financial relationship or the price that you offer the subscriber. What we often find is that the motivation for subscriptions that changes across your audience. So you have some people that are very interested in the content, some people that are very interested in the cause. They want to have a journalistic organization in their community. Sometimes they're very sensitive to price, so we call that cost conscious. And understanding how their particular relationship with the paper is evolved will often give you insights as to what's the best approach for acquiring that person. Similarly, when they're a reader, we understand that why are certain people churning. We often find that renewal price increases certainly cause some incremental churn, but in most cases the price is not the main reason that you lose the customer. So a lot of the value we provide, my firm does to our clients, is we help identify and quantify these factors that are affecting their subscription acquisition and retention and lifetime value.
No, nice. That's a good way of putting it, and it's good to understand. Obviously, that's a difficult thing. I guess everyone's different, right? And there's different cohorts of people that are reading these media outlets, be that a celebrity focused newspaper versus a financial focused newspaper. There's two different cohorts of people that are looking at that information. Is there any common kind of myths around propensity that you can call out and bring to life? Is there anything like that?
Well, there's a lot of jargon that gets pushed out there, and in many cases there's we find that there are some really core concepts that people need to think about. One is that your customers are some interesting facts, I guess I'll start with, is that most people that subscribe to a product, a newspaper or another periodical or a digital product or service, they've actually often will hit that paywall 5 to 10 times before they accept the offer. And so what that type of hitting the paywall and having them go away often doesn't happen. What happens is people will hit a paywall, they'll go back to the last thing they read, or they'll stay on the site and they'll try to read whatever they can. And the goal is to really get as much information as you can on that person, so that you can, again, increase that personalization and make that value proposition as meaningful to them as possible. And for that reason, sometimes we like to have segmentation or A/B tests that go on for a period of time. And so a lot of times we're wrestling with technologies that maybe want to have really refreshed segmentation. Sometimes you'll hear the term real-time segments, and in some cases real time is not helpful, in some cases it is, but it's really, in the context of what we do, we're often really interested in this long-term relationship and treating that person, testing what's working for that group of people and sustaining that characterization so we can run that test for a period of time.
Yeah, it's funny. I was talking to someone about lifetime value the other day, and it kind of it syncs all together. The same kind of conversations. You got your propensity to buy, propensity to churn. We've got your kind of concepts around understanding the customer, and that's going to make sure that ensure, I guess, that your lifetime value, you're maximizing that lifetime value of that customer, even average revenue per that customer as well, or ARPU as they call it in this industry. But it's just really interesting to obviously understand it from your side of things. A question then: is there any kind of horror stories that people can take away as something that they can not follow that route? So when I say that, is there something critical to kind of get right? Is there something where you've seen if you were starting out with a propensity model now, what would you say do, and what would you say not to do?
Sure. So what we recommend as an approach for these types of things is to start with what we often call the use case or the end goal in mind, and work backwards. So what I mean by that is, let's say your use case is we want to acquire digital subscribers. And then you say, okay, that's our goal. The next question is, how can analytics improve that or help you achieve that goal? And so what we would then perhaps say is, we want a propensity model. We would like to understand which are the subscribers or potential subscribers that we can acquire, or which ones need more, let's call it, relationship building before we acquire them. So then you'd say, okay, well, what data do you need to do those analytics? And in the case of a propensity score, you then would be like, okay, well, we need to know, what type of device they're coming from. We need to have, ideally, we need to know who they are, an email address or some sort of identification, so they're no longer anonymous. We want to have maybe some understanding of what content they're reading. And so you work backwards towards the data, and then you can then think of it also as, what type of technical capability requirements are there for our tech stack? So if we want to have this type of offer, targeted offer, what will the systems need to be able to do their interfacing with that customer? This is what we typically consider the best way forward. Some people flip this around. They start with the data first, and then they invest lots of time and energy and money in gathering all of the data, at the front end. And those data projects, can sometimes consume lots of money and lots of time. And in many cases, you will ultimately kind of get to a use case, and then you'll discover that you don't exactly have the right data. So then you have to go back and add other fields to your data lake or whatever it may be. So that. I guess if I had to give one piece of advice, it would be to, start with the end in mind and work backwards.
That's great, and it's good to understand, and hopefully some of our listeners can take that away as one piece of advice. Look, Matt, as far as the theme goes, around kind of propensity, I think that gives everyone a good intro. Is there anything else you'd share on that subject that maybe I've missed off or haven't asked a question about?
Well, I think I think the propensity is a great one. I think that there's this idea of this, what's the right business model. And so what we always tell our customers is to tell our clients is to put their customers first, really try to make a compelling product or, a compelling value proposition. And then then kind of work from there. And so you can have all of the wonderful personalization and propensity modeling in the world, but if you don't have a really good product to sell, then it doesn't really matter.
Absolutely, and we see that. I see that in so many businesses. But no, look, it's really interesting to understand that. Look, let me just recap a few things, and what I took away from this, and obviously understanding this from my limited knowledge on it so far. I'm learning more every day. Is there's a few things. Obviously, the end goal is to optimize the subscribers. I guess that people are cost conscious. There is sensitivity to price. We've got the propensity to buy, which obviously, as we talked about, is a reflection of how engaged they are, how they find your content. Really, do they find it good content? Are they going to potentially buy a subscription down the line? And obviously, you've got the churn. There's indicators, the likelihood to churn. But I guess there's a couple of things at the end there I took away, and it's kind of around the recommended approach, and I really like that. Don't start with data first. Have an end goal and work backwards. It's great advice. So what is the end goal? Acquire digital subscribers. How are we going to do that? And then work back with the data from there. But obviously, at the end of the day, you can't introduce any kind of propensity model unless you've got a compelling value proposition. So you need to put those customers first. Look, Matt, absolute pleasure to talk about that with you. Before you go though, and before we finish and I leave you to your day, I've got a few kind of add-on questions that I might not have told you about in advance, which is obviously always good. So first of all, we are creating a coffee club playlist. Okay, so we're running the Zephr Coffee Club on Thursdays. And I'm creating a playlist to kind of help people feel more upbeat, right? We've got our first song from Julian on the previous episode who recommended the Scatterlights. If I said to you, name one upbeat song that you'd like to add to the playlist, what would it be?
Oh, great. Well, this is absolutely, you've caught me. A weakness I have is I can never remember the names of my favorite songs, but I will say that there's some great ones out there from, Mumford & Son, big upbeat band from the UK. They also fans of some, like U2. I'm old school, so U2's been around a while, but I have to admit, they have some good songs out there, like "Beautiful Day," some of their classics.
Should we go for that one then? Look, let's go for "Beautiful Day," U2. I might throw in a Mumford & Son song myself just for to finish that off. And last thing, if I was coming to Atlanta, which is where you're based, and you said, hey, come down the local bar with me and you're going to have one of these drinks. Some favorite drink. What would it be?
So we have a beer renaissance going on here in Atlanta. There's several local startups. There's some great ones. There's Sweetwater 420 is their Sweetwater Brewery, but their main beer is called a 420, and that's kind of an Atlanta classic. I think it's gotten it's pretty popular. So I'd start there, but there's plenty more. We could make a whole night of it for sure.
Definitely, I'll hold you to that next time I'm over. And last but not least, obviously we're getting listeners that might want to get in touch. How do they do that?
Well, you can always our website is mathereconomics.com, and then you're welcome to reach me via email at matt@mathereconomics.com. So love to hear from the listeners.
Perfect. Look, I'll definitely make sure those links are out there so people can get in touch. But Matt, pleasure speaking. Thank you for giving us a quick overview of propensity modeling and how the basic kind of level, beginner's level propensity modeling. There we go. So it's much appreciated. Thank you for your time, and great to have you on the Zephr podcast.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure. Take care.